They said it was harmless. Just a study. A chance to make easy money. That's how the letter described it when it arrived in my mailbox. Volunteers needed 30-day sleep study, $50,000 compensation, confidential government research. I was broke, drowning in debt, and one eviction notice away from living on the streets. So when I read the words $50,000, I didn't hesitate. I filled out the application that same night. A week later, a black van pulled up outside my apartment at 3 a.m. 2 men in suits stepped out. They didn't ask questions. They just handed me a blindfold and said, "Come with us." That was the first red flag. But by then, I was already inside. The facility. The van drove for hours. I had no idea where we were, no windows, no sense of direction. When the blindfold finally came off, I found myself in an underground facility. The place felt wrong. The walls were smooth, gray concrete, the air sharp with the smell of antiseptic. Bright fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, far too bright for comfort. There were 7 of us in total, strangers, all looking just as confused as I was. A young woman with piercings who kept biting her lip. A middle-aged man in a business suit, sweating through his collar. 2 college kids who wouldn't stop whispering to each other. A tall, gaunt man with a twitch under his eye. And a woman who looked like she hadn't slept in days already. They gave us uniforms, plain white clothes like hospital scrubs, and led us to a large common room. There were no windows, just cameras in every corner. Then came the rules. The rules. A doctor in a pristine lab coat stood before us. His face was pale, his eyes sharp behind small glasses. He never smiled. "You have all volunteered for the National Sleep Deprivation Research Program," he said. "The objective is simple. You will remain awake for 30 days. No sleep whatsoever. In return, each of you will receive $50,000 upon completion." One of the college kids laughed. "That's it? Just stay awake? Easy money, man." The doctor's lips curled into something that might have been a smile but wasn't. "To ensure compliance, the following measures will be taken," he continued. "The lights will remain on at all times. No beds, couches, or pillows will be provided. Stimulants will be administered if you show signs of fatigue. If you fall asleep, you will be removed from the program." He paused, letting the silence hang before adding, "Removed permanently." We all exchanged nervous glances. "Surely you mean disqualified, right?" the man in the business suit asked. The doctor adjusted his glasses. "Of course." But the way he said it made my stomach twist. Day 1, hour 12. The first 12 hours were almost fun. We were given food, water, and puzzles to pass the time. A television played static-filled old movies none of us recognized. The college kids joked about pulling all-nighters for exams. The woman with piercings drummed her fingers against the table. I kept pacing, trying to burn off the unease crawling under my skin. Every wall had a camera. Every movement was being watched. At some point, the gaunt man muttered under his breath, "This isn't a study, it's a prison." None of us responded. Day 2, hour 36. Sleep deprivation hits faster than you think. By the second day, our bodies ached, our eyes burned, and conversations slurred into nonsense. The doctors, there were at least 5 of them, always silent, always watching, administered pills that jolted us awake, filling our veins with restless energy. That night, or what we thought was night, we heard something strange, a scratching sound. It came from the vents, faint but persistent, like nails dragging across metal. The woman who already looked exhausted froze, staring at the ceiling. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. We all did. The college kids laughed nervously, saying it was just rats. But the sound didn't stop. It moved, above us, around us, until it seemed to circle the entire room. Then suddenly, silence. We told ourselves it was nothing. But the cameras in the corners seemed to tilt ever so slightly, as if watching how we reacted. Day 3, hour 60. By now, our minds were unraveling. The man in the business suit began talking to himself, mumbling numbers under his breath. The woman with piercings started scratching her arms raw, leaving red streaks. Me? I kept seeing things in the corner of my vision, shadows that weren't there, figures standing just beyond the light. At one point, I swore I saw someone sitting at the table who wasn't part of our group. A man with no face. He was just there for a moment, and then gone. When I mentioned it, the others fell silent. Then the gaunt man leaned close and whispered, "Don't talk about them. That's how they notice you." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. Day 4, hour 80. That's when the first one disappeared. The woman who looked exhausted from the beginning, her name was Mara, collapsed against the wall, mumbling incoherently. Her eyes rolled back, her body twitching. We shouted for help. The cameras whirred. Within seconds, the door hissed open, and 2 men in black entered. They strapped her to a stretcher, wheeling her out without a word. The business suit man demanded answers, screaming at the cameras. "Where are you taking her?" No response. The door sealed shut again, and Mara was gone. But that night, as I tried to keep my eyes open, I heard something that made my blood run cold. From the vents above, Mara's voice, soft, broken, whispering my name. What if the voices you hear at night aren't in your head, but in the walls? At first, I told myself it wasn't real. That exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But when I whispered to the others the next morning, quietly, carefully, they admitted something terrifying. They had heard Mara too. The woman with piercings, whose name I finally learned was Tessa, said she heard her own name being whispered. Not by Mara, but by someone else. The business suit man, Graham, confessed that during the night he felt someone breathing on his neck while he sat at the table. When he spun around, no one was there. None of us slept, but all of us were dreaming. Day 5, hour 100. By the 5th day, the room had changed. Not physically, same concrete walls, same humming lights, same cameras, but it felt different. Colder, darker, heavier. The scratching in the vents returned. This time it wasn't faint, it was loud, aggressive. Something was up there, something alive. The gaunt man, his name was Victor, stood beneath the vent, staring at it with wide, bloodshot eyes. "They're testing us," he whispered, "not for science, for endurance, for control." I asked him what he meant. He leaned so close I could smell the rot on his breath. "They're trying to peel us open, strip away what makes us human. Once you lose sleep, the mind stops protecting you, and they slip in." Before I could ask who they were, Graham interrupted by slamming his fist on the table. "This is insane," he shouted at the cameras. "We want out. Do you hear me? I quit." We all froze. The words "I quit" seemed to echo around the room, swallowed by silence. The door hissed open. 2 men in black walked in, their faces expressionless. Without hesitation, they grabbed Graham. He fought, screaming, punching, begging. But they dragged him out like he weighed nothing. The door slammed shut. The cameras turned toward us, watching. None of us said a word. Day 6, hour 120. There were only 5 of us left now. Tessa wouldn't stop pacing. The college kids, Ethan and Riley, were pale and quiet, whispering things I couldn't hear. Victor stared at the vents, muttering to himself in another language. I tried to hold on, tried to remind myself it was just a study, that there was money waiting at the end. But every time I closed my eyes, even for a blink, I saw things that didn't belong. Flashes of rooms I'd never been in, people I didn't know. A figure standing just beyond the light, faceless, waiting. The whispers grew worse. That night, I heard Graham, his voice thin and broken, begging, "Don't let them take me back in there." Day 7, hour 144. We were cracking. Riley suddenly screamed in the middle of eating, throwing his food against the wall. "It's moving! The floor is moving!" He dropped to his knees, clawing at the concrete like something was beneath it. When Ethan tried to stop him, Riley turned violent, swinging wildly until Victor pulled them apart. Riley's nails bled from scratching the floor. He wouldn't stop muttering, "It's hollow, hollow underneath." The doctors didn't come for him. Not yet. But the next morning, Riley was gone. No one saw him leave. No one saw the door open. He was just gone. And the cameras didn't move. Wait, hour 160. Ethan was broken. His brother was gone, and he refused to eat. He sat in the corner, knees to his chest, whispering prayers under his breath. Tessa tried to comfort him, but she was unraveling too. Her arms covered in fresh scratches, eyes darting everywhere like she expected the walls to collapse. That left me and Victor. He told me the truth that night, or at least what he believed was the truth. "This isn't the first experiment," he said, his voice low. "They've done this before, years ago, in Russia, in Poland, in Germany. The names change, but the experiment is always the same." I frowned. "What experiment?" "Sleep," he whispered. "They think sleep is a barrier, a wall between our world and theirs. Keep someone awake long enough, and the wall crumbles. Things slip through. Things that don't belong." He leaned closer. "That's why they don't let us sleep. They want to invite them in." I wanted to laugh, to call him insane. But deep down, I knew he was right. Because that night, when I blinked longer than I should have, I saw something crawl out of the vent. It wasn't human. It was pale, thin, with limbs too long and eyes that glowed faintly in the fluorescent light. It crept along the ceiling, pausing directly above Ethan, watching him tremble. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. When I looked again, it was gone. But Ethan began to scream. Day 9, hour 180. Ethan didn't last the day. He clawed at his own eyes, shrieking that he couldn't stop seeing them. His screams echoed through the room until his voice broke. The door opened. The men in black came. But this time, something was different. As they dragged Ethan out, I swear I saw the pale creature crouched in the doorway behind them, watching. And when the door slammed shut, the cameras turned, slowly, directly toward me. Day 10, hour 200. Only 3 of us remained. Me, Tessa, and Victor. Tessa was losing herself. She scratched words into the wall with her nails, bloody letters that made no sense. "Let them in. Let them in. Let them in." Victor didn't try to stop her. He only watched. And me? I finally understood what was happening. This wasn't a sleep study. It wasn't about science. It was about sacrifice. They weren't testing how long we could stay awake. They were testing how long it took before the barrier broke, before the creatures on the other side clawed their way in. And we were the bait. That night, I lay on the cold concrete, staring at the ceiling. The scratching in the vents was louder than ever. And then, a whisper. So close, it felt like it was inside my head. It wasn't Mara. It wasn't Graham. It wasn't anyone I knew. It was me. My own voice whispering from the vent. "You don't leave here alive." What if the thing whispering your name was you? By the 10th night, I no longer trusted my own senses. Hunger gnawed at me. My skin itched like something crawled beneath it. And the whispers, God, the whispers, never stopped. They echoed inside the vents, inside my skull, bleeding into every thought. Tessa sat in the corner, rocking back and forth, her arms covered in fresh wounds. She scratched herself so badly that blood dripped down her wrists, pooling on the floor. She didn't even flinch. Victor, however, looked calm. Too calm. He sat upright, staring straight at the cameras. "They're watching," he said suddenly. We all knew it, but something in his voice made me shiver. "Not just the doctors," he continued. "Them, the ones we let in." I forced a laugh. "You mean the shadows?" Victor didn't blink. "Not shadows. Predators." He pointed at the corner of the ceiling. "One is there right now. You don't see it because you don't want to, but it sees you." Day 11, hour 2:20. That day, the food trays were late. Hours passed with nothing but the flicker of fluorescent lights and the sound of our stomachs growling. When the door finally opened, only one tray slid through. For 3 people. Tessa lunged at it, tearing into the bread and fruit like a starving animal. Victor let her eat. He just watched, his sunken eyes fixed on me. "You notice it too, don't you?" he asked softly. I swallowed. "Notice what?" "That it's all intentional. Less food, more hunger, the stress, the fear. It breaks us down faster, makes us easier to..." He trailed off. "Easier to what?" I demanded. His lips curled into a strange, crooked smile. "Easier to enter." The walls breathed. That night, the room felt alive. I know how insane that sounds, but the air shifted in pulses, as if the walls themselves were breathing. Every exhale carried the scent of rot and damp soil. The scratches in the vents weren't distant anymore. They were right above us, sharp, frantic, like claws on metal. Tessa screamed suddenly, pointing at the far wall. "There! It's coming through! Do you see it?" I turned, and for a split second, I did see it. The wall bulged outward, stretching like something was pressing from the other side. The concrete cracked, fine lines splintering outward. Then just as quickly, it was gone. Tessa clawed at her face, sobbing hysterically. "They're here! They're here!" The cameras zoomed in on her, recording every moment. The door never opened. No one came to take her. Day 12, hour 2:40. Tessa didn't last much longer. She stopped talking to us entirely, muttering only to the walls, scraping her nails against the concrete until they bled, whispering things like, "Not yet, not ready, soon." By evening, she was gone. Not taken, not screaming, just gone. One moment she was curled in the corner, scratching words into the wall. The next, the space was empty. No sound, no trace, as if she had been erased from reality itself. I turned to Victor, panicked. "Where is she?" He smiled faintly. "They claimed her." The visitors. Only Victor and I remained. And that night, I finally saw them clearly. The lights flickered, buzzing and humming. I blinked, and in that instant, shadows stretched unnaturally long. Figures emerged, thin, skeletal, skin pale as bone. Their movements jerky, unnatural, like broken puppets being dragged across strings. Their faces, if you could call them that, were warped. Eyes too large, mouths too wide, jaws distending as they breathed in sync with the flickering lights. One of them crouched directly over me, close enough to touch. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting me back at myself. But it wasn't me. It was wrong. An echo. A hollow version. I froze, too terrified to move. Victor didn't look afraid. He just whispered, "Don't fight them, that's what they want." The creature tilted its head, studying me like a predator deciding whether to strike. Then slowly, it crawled back into the darkness, melting into the corner until nothing remained. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only sit there shaking while Victor chuckled softly. Day 13, hour 2:60. When I woke, if you can call it waking, I realized I wasn't sure anymore what was real. Had I fallen asleep? Had I dreamt the creatures? Or were they real, slipping between the moments I blinked? The cameras hummed above us, lenses clicking, always watching. Victor leaned close. His voice was barely a whisper. "They like you." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "They show themselves to you. That means they've chosen you." I shook my head. Chosen me for what? His smile widened, revealing cracked yellow teeth. To replace the ones who left. The break. By the end of the 13th day, I was breaking. My mind felt shredded, thoughts slipping through my grasp like water. The whispers were no longer confined to the vents. They were inside my skull, my own voice, my own words, but not mine. "You won't leave. You belong here. You've always belonged here." At one point, I found myself standing at the door, scratching at the metal until my fingernails bent backward. I didn't even remember walking there. Victor pulled me away, laughing. "Not yet. They're not ready to open the door for you." I stared at him, horror flooding me. He wasn't afraid at all. He wasn't resisting. He was welcoming it. P14, hour 280. The cameras shifted again, their lenses focusing on me, zooming in. I could hear the faint click-click of the machinery adjusting. "They're documenting the transformation," Victor said casually, like we were part of a science project. "What transformation?" I snapped. He leaned back against the wall, eyes glassy, smile serene. "Into what they need us to be." I shook my head. "You're insane." His eyes locked on mine. "Then why haven't they taken me yet? Why am I still here?" I couldn't answer, because deep down, I knew he was right. That night, the whispers grew so loud I thought my skull would split. I pressed my hands to my ears, screaming, but it didn't matter, because the voice was mine. "You'll never sleep again." And when I opened my eyes, Victor was standing over me, smiling, his lips moving in perfect sync with the whispers inside my head. What if the only other survivor wasn't really human anymore? By the 14th night, Victor's smile haunted me more than the creatures. He didn't blink anymore. Didn't eat, didn't drink. He just sat there, calm, still, staring at me like he knew something I didn't. When I finally confronted him, my voice was hoarse, ragged from screaming against the whispers. "What are you?" He tilted his head, amused. "Same as you. A volunteer." "No," I snapped. "You're different. You don't sleep, you don't eat, you don't even break," he finished for me, grinning. My blood ran cold. The story he told. That night, Victor decided to talk. "Do you know why they picked us?" he asked, leaning closer. His eyes glittered in the harsh fluorescent light. I shook my head, clutching my arms to stop the trembling. "They don't choose randomly. They choose the desperate, the broken, people who won't be missed." He laughed softly. "You think you applied? That you signed up? No, they already knew you'd accept before you read the letter. That was just part of the test." I felt sick. "Test for what?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "To see who will survive the opening." I froze. "The opening?" Victor's smile widened, revealing cracked yellow teeth. "The wall between worlds. Sleep holds it shut, but starve the body of rest, and the cracks form. That's when they slip through. That's when we see them." I wanted to call him insane, but I couldn't, because I had seen them. Day 15, hour 300. The cameras watched everything. I began to notice a pattern. Every time the shadows appeared, the lenses zoomed in, whirring softly. They weren't just monitoring us, they were recording the creatures too. I pointed this out to Victor, but he only laughed. "Of course, they want proof. Proof that the barrier can be broken, that we can survive contact." I shivered. "Survive? You call this surviving?" Victor leaned in so close I could smell the rot on his breath. "It's only the beginning." The night without lights. On the 15th night, the fluorescent lights flickered and went out. For the first time since we arrived, the room was plunged into complete darkness. I froze, unable to see even my own hands. The silence was suffocating. Then, slowly, I heard it. Movement. Not one set of footsteps, dozens, maybe hundreds. Crawling, dragging, slithering across the concrete floor. I backed into the wall, my chest heaving, heart slamming against my ribs. And then, eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes blinking open in the black. Whispers swarmed, overlapping, hundreds of voices speaking at once. Some familiar, some not. All in my voice. "Join us, become us. You already are us." Something cold brushed against my arm. Thin, bony fingers. I screamed, thrashing wildly, but the grip was unbreakable. The lights buzzed back on, and nothing was there. The room was empty, silent, except for Victor, smiling. Victor's confession. After that, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I grabbed Victor by the collar, shaking him violently. "What are they?" I shouted. "What do they want?" He didn't resist. He only chuckled. "They want what's always been theirs. Us." His eyes burned into mine. "Do you really think sleep is natural? That shutting off your mind every night is just rest? No. Sleep is the barrier, the only defense your brain has against them, the only way to keep them out." I felt dizzy. My stomach lurched. "That's not possible." "Then why do you see them now?" he whispered. I released him, stumbling back. My legs shook so badly I nearly collapsed. Victor stood tall, almost proud. They couldn't reach me before. But now I'm open. I let them in. I stared at him in horror. "You mean you're one of them?" His grin widened. "Not yet, but soon." Day 16, hour 3:20. I stopped counting hours. Time dissolved into one endless nightmare. The whispers never stopped. The scratching grew louder, closer. Sometimes I swore I saw cracks spreading through the walls, faint lines glowing faintly with something dark on the other side. The food trays didn't come anymore. We were left with nothing. I collapsed on the floor, weak, trembling, my throat raw from thirst. I wanted to sleep so badly. Just close my eyes, even for a second. But I knew if I did, it wouldn't be sleep. It would be surrender. Victor crouched beside me, his eyes wild, his smile stretched too wide. "They're almost through," he whispered. "I can hear them scratching, can't you?" I could. God help me, I could. The thing in the mirror. On the 17th day, something new appeared. The far wall shimmered, rippling like liquid. For a moment, I thought I was hallucinating until I saw my reflection in it. But it wasn't me. It was pale, gaunt, with hollow eyes and a mouth stretched too wide. My reflection grinned at me, tilting its head in mockery. Behind it, in the reflection, stood dozens of figures, all of them faceless, all of them watching. I stumbled back, choking on my own breath. Victor only laughed. "They're waiting for you," he said softly, "for the moment you let go." I shut my eyes, but the reflection burned in my mind, etched like fire. The breaking point. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I pressed my palms against the wall, whispering, "Please, just let me out. Please." The concrete was cold, but then it pulsed, warm, beating, like a heart. A voice whispered back, soft and sickeningly familiar. "You're already out. You just haven't realized it yet." I stumbled back, shaking violently. Victor was watching me with that same serene smile. "You see now," he said. "The door was never to the outside. The door was always inside us." He leaned closer, his voice breaking into a whisper that wasn't his. "And tonight, they'll walk through." Do you believe the human mind can survive without dreams? Or does it eventually devour itself? The question had been scrawled across the observation window in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. No one could say for sure when it appeared. One moment the glass was spotless, the next it bore that message. Slashed letters, jagged and uneven. Dr. Halloway stared at it for almost a full minute, motionless before whispering, They're trying to communicate." Except none of the subjects were near the glass. The writing was on the inside. The descent. By day 11, the room was a nightmare factory. The smell was the first thing that hit the observers, an acidic blend of sweat, decay, and something metallic, like rusted iron. One subject had stopped moving entirely, sitting rigid in the corner, eyes wide open, refusing food or water. His lips moved constantly, but no sound came out. Another paced in jagged circles, muttering under his breath, scratching bloody symbols into his own arms. But it was Subject 6, the quiet one, who unsettled them most. He hadn't spoken in days, but whenever anyone looked at him through the observation window, he was already staring back. Not just looking, watching, unblinking, as if he knew who was on the other side of the glass. One intern swore he saw Subject 6 mouth his name, but he'd never given it. The first break. It was the technician, Dwyer, who cracked first. On the morning of day 12, after another night of endless screams from the test chamber, he slammed his headset onto the control desk and shouted, "This isn't science anymore, this is torture!" His outburst silenced the room. General Abrams narrowed his eyes. "You're relieved, go home. Now." But Dwyer didn't leave. His face was pale, twitching, his voice trembling. "Don't you get it? They're not just losing their minds. Something else is waking up inside them. We've opened the door, and it doesn't want to be closed." Before anyone could stop him, Dwyer stormed toward the test chamber. The door slammed shut behind him. What they saw. The monitors lit up with chaos. The subjects rushed him instantly, like predators recognizing fresh prey. But they didn't attack him. Instead, they circled him, muttering incoherently, their voices overlapping in some grotesque chant. Dwyer's microphone picked up every word. "Not alone, not alone, not alone, not alone." Over and over, in perfect unison. Dr. Holloway screamed through the intercom, "Dwyer, get out of there, now!" But Dwyer wasn't moving. He stood perfectly still, tears streaming down his face, whispering, "I can hear them. Oh my God, I can hear them." The lights inside the chamber flickered. For a moment, all 6 subjects and Dwyer turned their heads in the exact same motion, their eyes locking onto the observation window. Everyone watching felt the same thing, an invisible hand pressing down on their chest, choking the air out of them. And then the feed went black. The silence. When the screens came back online 30 seconds later, Dwyer was gone. Not dead, not torn apart, not even a drop of blood. Just gone. All 6 subjects were seated neatly in a row against the far wall, staring blankly at the camera, their lips curled into identical smiles. Dr. Holloway whispered, "They've finally synchronized." No one dared respond. The experiment had entered a stage no one could control. What if the thing keeping them awake isn't human at all? The storm outside had grown louder, slamming sheets of rain against the walls of the abandoned hospital. The emergency lights flickered, their dying glow painting the hallway in brief flashes of red. Dr. Adler led the way, clutching his flashlight tightly, as Sarah and Ethan followed. Somewhere ahead, beyond the shattered doors of the containment wing, a low groaning echoed, neither fully human nor completely monstrous. Sarah whispered, "Are we sure we even want to find them?" Dr. Adler didn't answer. His breathing was ragged, and sweat dripped down his forehead despite the freezing air. He looked like a man possessed, his eyes wild with determination. The recordings. They finally reached the sealed chamber. The reinforced glass wall had long since cracked, but a steel door, twisted and dented, barely held in place. On the wall nearby, a control panel flickered to life. Sarah brushed the dust away and realized it was a recording interface. Multiple files blinked on screen. Log 21, Day 1. Log 45, Day 7. Log 78, Day 14. Final log, unknown. Ethan hesitated. "Do we play one?" Against her better judgment, Sarah tapped the first file. The speakers crackled. A man's voice, cheerful and confident, filled the hallway. "Welcome to Project Eterna. Today marks the first day of our test subjects remaining awake. If this succeeds, we will redefine human limits." Static. The next log began automatically. The voice was shaky now. Day 7. Subjects show severe paranoia. They speak of shadows on the ceiling. They claim someone whispers their names when no one else is in the room. Still, they remain awake. Ethan shivered. Whispers? Log 14 played. Screams. Desperate. Inhuman. The sound of nails against metal. The researcher's voice was almost drowned out. Day 14. The subjects are changing. They haven't slept in 2 weeks. Their eyes bleed when exposed to light. Their teeth, God, their teeth, look sharper. They don't just resist sleep, they resist us. Then silence. Finally, the last file. At first, nothing, just heavy breathing. Then, slowly, a whispering chorus emerged. Dozens of voices layered on top of one another, chanting the same word. Awake, awake, awake. Sarah yanked her hand away from the console as the sound grew louder, almost shaking the walls. The steel door rattled violently, as if something on the other side heard the voices too. The door breaks. Turn it off! Ethan screamed, but the system refused. The speakers blared with maddening intensity. The steel door groaned under pressure. With a deafening screech, the metal bent outward. A pale, bony hand forced its way through the crack. Dr. Adler's face lit up, not with fear, but wonder. "It worked," he whispered. "It really worked." Sarah grabbed his arm. "What the hell is wrong with you? That thing isn't human anymore." But Adler yanked himself free, stepping closer to the door as more hands pushed through, clawing at the air. Their skin was shredded, their fingernails blackened, but their grip was terrifyingly strong. And then, through the widening gap, eyes appeared. Dozens of them, bloodshot, staring in every direction at once. The survivors. The door finally tore off its hinges. A figure emerged, tall, skeletal, its body trembling with unnatural energy. Its jaw stretched wider than humanly possible, teeth jagged and broken, yet strong enough to snap through bone. But the worst part was the sound. The voices. The creature spoke in unison with the others trapped behind it. "You cannot sleep. Neither can we. We are forever awake." Sarah froze. Ethan dragged her backward, heart pounding, as Adler stepped toward the creature, hands shaking but smiling like a madman. "They've ascended," he murmured. "Do you see it? They've shed sleep like a useless skin. They've become more than human." The creature's clawed hand pierced through his chest before he could finish. Blood sprayed the walls as Adler collapsed, still smiling. Sarah screamed. Ethan pulled her into a side corridor just as the creatures began to pour out of the chamber, crawling, limping, and twitching, all whispering that same word, "Awake, awake, awake." The pursuit. They ran. The hallways echoed with the sound of claws scraping tiles and the whispering chant that never seemed to fade. No matter how far they ran, the voices always sounded right behind them. Sarah stumbled. Ethan yanked her up, adrenaline surging. "We need an exit," he shouted. "There isn't one," she cried. "The storm took out the main doors." They turned a corner and froze. The walls ahead were covered in writing, jagged scratches carved deep into the plaster. The same word repeated over and over, hundreds of times. Awake. Sarah's flashlight flickered. For the briefest moment, she saw movement among the words, as if the shadows themselves were writhing. The whispers grew louder. Then, silence. The air turned freezing cold. Their breath clouded before them, and in that suffocating stillness, a voice spoke directly into their ears. Not from behind them, not from the walls, but from inside their heads. "Why do you run? You've already joined us." Sarah screamed, clutching her skull. Ethan staggered back, eyes wide. "What do they mean?" he gasped. Her flashlight died, and in the darkness, countless eyes opened all around them. The experiment is no longer confined to the chamber. The creatures, or whatever they've become, are everywhere. And Sarah and Ethan may already be more involved in the experiment than they realize. What if the real experiment was never about sleep at all? The room fell into an unnatural silence. Dr. Hayes' words echoed in the sterile air, louder than any scream could have been. Ethan's hands trembled as he pressed his back against the cold steel wall, his heart pounding like a trapped animal's. What do you mean?" he whispered, though part of him already feared the answer. Dr. Hayes removed his glasses slowly, almost ceremoniously, as if peeling away a mask. His eyes gleamed with a strange mix of triumph and exhaustion. The truth is, Ethan, the sleep deprivation, the chemicals, the wires, they were just distractions. This experiment was never about testing how long the human body can survive without rest. Then what was it about? Ethan asked, his voice breaking. Hayes leaned closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the dim light. It was about what comes through when the mind is kept open too long. Ethan shook his head violently. No, you're lying. You're trying to mess with me. Hayes cut him off, his voice sharp, commanding. Think, Ethan. Think back to the voices, the whispers you heard in the dark. Do you truly believe those were hallucinations? Did you ever stop to wonder why everyone heard the same phrases, the same words, even though you were separated, isolated, and sedated differently? Ethan's blood ran cold. His mind clawed for rational explanations, but they crumbled like ash. He remembered the whispers, unfamiliar yet intimate, speaking names he had never told anyone. He remembered the words that crawled under his skin. We are awake. Hayes's lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. We didn't unlock madness, Ethan. We unlocked a doorway. The lights flickered violently, buzzing as though the entire facility trembled with a pulse not its own. From the observation room beyond the glass, Ethan saw movement. Shadows, writhing, pressing against the walls like drowning figures reaching from beneath black water. They're still here, aren't they? Ethan whispered. Hayes nodded solemnly. Yes, we pulled them through. Not fully, but enough. He lowered his voice, almost reverent. The human brain is a gate. Sleep keeps it closed. Deny sleep long enough, and the gate stays open. Something slips in. Ethan staggered backward, bile rising in his throat. You made us bait. A bitter laugh escaped Hayes. We made you pioneers. Without you, none of this could have been proven. Ethan slammed his fists against the glass between them. Proven? People died. They weren't people anymore by the end. Hayes didn't flinch. His eyes were feverish, obsessed. And yet, they showed us what lies beyond. Do you understand the importance of that? We've touched the edge of another reality, Ethan. We've brushed against something greater than life itself. A deep, guttural groan reverberated through the walls, vibrating the glass so hard Ethan thought it might shatter. The shadows behind Hayes writhed faster, shapes peeling away from the darkness like silhouettes breaking free. They had no faces, no forms, only outlines of hunger. Ethan's chest tightened. His instincts screamed at him to run, but the door behind him was locked tight. His only path led closer to Hayes and the horrors stirring beyond the glass. What happens now? Ethan asked, his voice barely audible. Hayes tilted his head, almost childlike. Now they come through fully. The experiment is complete. The glass cracked. A single jagged line split across the observation window. Ethan's stomach dropped. Hayes didn't move. He was still smiling, eyes glowing in the dim. Don't you see, Ethan? You're the last one, the final subject. It's all been leading to this moment. Another crack split the glass, then another, like a spiderweb spreading across its surface. The shadows pressed harder, their whispers growing into a deafening chorus. Let us in. Let us in. Let us in. Hayes raised his arms as if welcoming gods. Open your mind, Ethan. Open the gate. Ethan screamed, shaking his head. No, I won't, But then, he realized something terrifying. The whispers weren't only in the room. They were inside his head. The lights burst, plunging everything into darkness. The last thing Ethan saw was Hayes, his face split with euphoria as black shapes flooded through the shattered glass. And in the dark, Ethan felt it, something ancient, something endless, slipping into him, taking root where his exhaustion had left cracks. The sleep experiment was never about what they could endure. It was about what would survive inside them. What if the experiment was never about sleep? but about something far worse. The cameras flickered one last time before plunging the room into near-total darkness. Only the faint, throbbing glow of the red emergency lights remained, painting the walls in a hellish hue. Dr. Hale's chest heaved as he stared at the figure that used to be Evelyn. Her lips twisted into something inhuman, neither smile nor snarl, but a grotesque mimicry of both. Her skin stretched unnaturally tight against her face, veins bulging beneath like rivers of black ink. "Why are you still awake?" Dr. Hale croaked, gripping the scalpel tighter. His hand trembled, though he knew it was useless against whatever stood before him. Evelyn tilted her head, the motion sharp, bird-like. "We never needed sleep," she said softly. Her voice was layered now, two tones overlapping, one human, one impossibly deep. "You needed us to. That was the lie." The words struck him harder than any blade could. From the corner, Grant's broken body shifted. His jaw hung loose, but his voice, raspy, filled with agony, joined hers. "Do you know what dreams really are, Doctor? They're the barrier, the chains. Sleep keeps us locked away. You took that from us." Dr. Hale stumbled backward, his mind spiraling. The experiment. It wasn't creating monsters. It was unleashing them. The monitors roared back to life, static swirling across the screens before forming grotesque images, flashes of distorted faces, shadows writhing, screaming mouths stretching wider than humanly possible. Every subject in the other rooms appeared briefly on the screens, but their eyes, God, their eyes were not their own. "You didn't open their minds," Evelyn whispered, stepping closer. "You opened the door." The overhead speakers crackled again with the director's voice, trembling now, devoid of the usual clinical calm. "Shut it down! Shut it down now!" But it was too late. The walls themselves began to pulse, faintly breathing, as though the building had become alive. Every emergency siren wailed at once, drowning out the chaos. One of the security doors buckled inward, not from explosives or human force, but from something unseen pressing against it, clawing its way into reality. Dr. Hale felt his sanity cracking. His entire career, his obsession with answers, had led him here. And now, the answer was staring back at him. Sleep wasn't weakness. Sleep wasn't mystery. Sleep was protection. The subjects advanced. Evelyn's eyes shimmered black, twin abysses. "Come with us, Doctor," she hissed. "See what waits on the other side." He raised the scalpel to his own throat, the only escape left. "I won't go with you," he whispered. But before the blade could pierce skin, the lights exploded overhead. Shards of glass rained down. The power surged once more, and then everything went silent. When the emergency response teams finally entered Facility 9 the next morning, they found blood, shattered equipment, and torn walls, but no bodies, not a single subject, not a single scientist. The experiment logs were corrupted, screens burned out, but one audio fragment was recovered. The distorted voice of Evelyn, or what had once been Evelyn. "We do not sleep because we no longer need to. You, on the other hand, should never close your eyes again." Final twist ending. The government classified the project as a catastrophic failure, burying it deep under layers of secrecy. Official reports claimed a containment breach, fire, and total loss of personnel. But weeks later, strange reports began trickling in. Families complaining of loved ones suddenly refusing to sleep, yet showing no fatigue. Towns whispering of people standing in the streets at night, eyes black as voids, swaying silently. And Dr. Hale? He was never recovered. But sometimes in late-night radio static, listeners claimed to hear his voice, begging, pleading, screaming the same words over and over. "Don't let them take your sleep. Don't let them in.